MariaDB Enterprise Manager is a complete observability system that provides a unified view of your database fleet with real-time telemetry and a workflow designed to reduce the mean time to detection. It includes a topology-based view of your fleet that is compatible with MariaDB MaxScale and Galera. It also includes pre-configured Grafana dashboards that follow MariaDB's good practices and an integrated workspace with an advanced SQL editor and a visual designer for entity relationship diagrams. So let me show you how to install this tool. And I have these two machines here. So in one, I'm running MariaDB Enterprise Server. And in this one, we are going to install the MariaDB Enterprise Manager. So you should use a separate machine for that, okay? So the installation process is simply running this script that you can get from your MariaDB customer portal. You will have to get the token and then download this script. Once you have done that, you can just run it, right? And it's going to download what's required. It's going to ask for the IP address where the software is going to be installed, which is this one, and also the port for the web UI that we're going to use to access the Enterprise Manager features. So I'm going to use the default 8090, and it's going to pull all the images and create the containers. Now you can install these with either Docker or Podman. If you're going to use Podman, make sure you have the Docker compatibility package installed, because you are going to need it, but that's all you have to do, and then you can use Podman. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we have some services created for us, or some containers. I think this shows these as services, and the core of it is this one. It's the hotel collector, which is the open telemetry collector that's gonna gather, that's gonna take or receive all the signals from an instrumented system. In this case, it's going to be MariaDB Enterprise Server instances or MaxScale instances. So this is the collector. The signals are things such as metrics or logs or traces, this kind of stuff, right? And then it's going to store that in Prometheus. So as you can see, it's based on very standard future-proof period of technologies. That's what MariaDB Enterprise Manager is based on. So it's future-proof. And that means also that you can use all the integrations for Prometheus. For example, you can have Grafana and have your dashboards, and also use Grafana alerting, which is built on top of, what is it called, Alert Manager, right? So pretty good stack. Now you have also something called SuperMax. This is the actual web application that you interact with in the browser when you are using the Enterprise Manager, and everything is front-ended kind of by an Nginx server, which acts as a kind of a reverse proxy, right? So it's going to take requests and direct them to either Grafana or SuperMax, right? So let's go to the SuperMax thing, which is right here. But notice that it says like the default username for Enterprise Manager is set to admin, and these passwords. I'm going to copy that one, and now we can go there with our browser. Let's use admin here and the password, and there you go. This is the MariaDB Enterprise Manager UI. You have your menu here with the databases, workspace settings for this application, and your user menu here. Let's actually change the password to MariaDB so I don't forget that, so we can use it later. All right, so that's how you install this thing, but of course you will have to add your databases here, right? So let's do that. You can do it with MaxScale, right, or without MaxScale. So let's do this one first, and let's call this MariaDB test just for now. Now you can add multiple servers. We are going to add only one, so let's call these MariaDB test 1. Then you need the address of the MariaDB server, which I have running here on this machine. So we need the host name. One way to execute Linux commands on this machine without leaving the MariaDB client is by using the system keyword here. And there's a shortcut version also. System and then host name interface this is my IP address, or for this server. So let's use that. The port is the default, and it's asking for some username and password. What is that? Well, if we go to the documentation of MariaDB Enterprise Manager, which is on mariadb.com/docs, and then you go to Tools here and Enterprise Manager, and you navigate all the way through these things until you find the adding databases, you will see that we have to create a couple of users. So I'm going to copy this part first. And this is the IP address where Enterprise Manager is running, which happens to be, well, this one here, right? Let's copy that one. And let's configure a password. I'm going to use monitor pass123 exclamation mark, so it's easy to remember. Let's get back to documentation. We need to grant some privileges to that same user. Let me copy the IP address from here. And that IP address is, of course, this machine, right? I think that was clear. Okay. And this one too. And this is for localhost. So one is for the MariaDB Enterprise Manager to connect remotely to this server. And the other one is for the agent that we're going to install later. So that one is actually, as you can see, localhost. And let's use the same password, monitor pass123 exclamation mark. And there are some grants that we need to give to this user. But that's it. Okay, so it's configured. Now we need to use that user monitor here when we are adding our database. That's what's expected here. And the password was this thing. Let me check. Yeah, correct. And I'm going to disable these just for simplicity. And that's it. We click add, and we should have now the database in MariaDB Enterprise Manager listed, but it's not registered, it said. So it's not receiving metrics. We need to do something here. We need to install the agent, right? So there's an option here that guides you through the process, right? So first of all, you will have to download or install the agent as such. Since I think I'm using Ubuntu, I'm gonna use this one here. So it's called MariaDB Enterprise Manager Agent. There you go. I think it's installed now. And then the rest we have done already. So once we have done that, we need to introduce the agent user, which was monitor and monitor pass123 exclamation mark. I'm going to skip this. And now we need to copy this command because this installed the agent but didn't configure the agent. This is how we configure it, right? Now we have done this part, and eventually we're going to get the metrics here. It takes like a minute or so until it starts to get the metrics. But meanwhile, we can add other databases, and I have some already pre-configured ones. So I'm going to call these MariaDB Enterprise. That one has MaxScale, so I'm going to call this MaxScale 1. The address was 192.168.1.249. I think it was the IP address. That's correct. Admin MariaDB. This is the username for the MaxScale user. I'm going to deactivate these, and that's it, really. Now it has detected all the topology, right? So it says primary replica, which it is. We have one primary, MariaDB Enterprise Server number 1. 2 and 3 are replicas. It gives me already some metrics because if I had registered these before starting the recording of this video, so I don't have to install the agent or anything. It was already installed there. And now let's add another one just for fun. Let's add a one without MaxScale, but we're going to add several servers here, and we're going to call these MariaDB Galera cluster, and we're going to add several. MariaDB, because I already have MariaDB 1, 2, and 3. So let's go with 4, and the address was the same machine, 168.1.249, and the port here was 14. username was admin, and I think, let's see if this works. I think it was, oh man, oh yeah, MariaDB admin pass 123 exclamation mark. Good that I don't have to go to scripts to look it up. All right, so we have one server. Let's duplicate this one because it's very similar, except this is going to be MariaDB Enterprise Server 5 and it's running in 1.5, the port. And that's the last one, which is MariaDB Enterprise Server 6 running on port 6 here. I guess that's it. You can select the kind of topology, this Galera cluster, so I'm going to pick that there. And we add it, and if I didn't make any mistakes, it should be there. There you go, it's working. How nice is this, right? And also, notice this one. This is the one we configured from scratch, MariaDB test. The standalone server is already receiving metrics, okay? Pretty cool. So this is how you add your databases. You have your fleet here, and you can access to everything you need to manage these instances from a single interface. And this is not toy, this is pre-advanced. I'm going to show you some of the features here. So why don't we start with, maybe let's have a quick look at the dashboard. So you can click on these little icons here to access the Grafana dashboards. So this has already pre-configured some nice visualizations for Grafana. And you can use these template variables here to select what you want. If you prefer to see the Galera cluster, you click on it, or the MariaDB test that we did. Let's stay on the MariaDB Enterprise server with MaxScale. So we see some information about this cluster, like uptime and with the configuration of each node, topology information, that is. And you have some system metrics with CPU, memory, and network usage, some file system information, disk use space utilization, your IOPS to keep an eye on disk saturation, that kind of stuff. Because we're using replication, then it's important to see the binary log size and have an eye on it, and other metrics on replication, right? For example, replication lag. You have some other interesting metrics for when something fails, for example, you see it. Query metrics, so we have the number of threads, your throughput in terms of queries per second, that's pretty cool. Slow queries. In terms of connection metrics, you have the number of connections, how they're, the utilization of these connections, aborted connections. There are even some range metrics for your queries, it's pretty cool, and also metrics specific to the MariaDB storage engine, right? The workhorse of MariaDB, MariaDB, okay? So you have your read writes, buffer locks, deadlocks, this kind of stuff. And then we have the process list, okay? So pretty good. Something you can also do, of course, you can customize these and create new dashboards and all that. But pretty good integration here is alerting, right? So you can create your alerts and move from a reactive kind of process to a more like acting before you get incidents. So that's pretty good. And you also can configure these for each topology. Okay, but I'll let you explore Galera, Grafana by yourself. Let's get back to the MariaDB Enterprise Manager. There was these little icons here, okay? But if we go to the menu here, we also have a workspace, which allows you to run queries and create entity relationship diagrams. So let's go with this one first. So you can select the server to which you want to connect. Let's use the test that we configured manually. And I also had created before starting recording the video, I created an app user. And I think it was user as 1, 2, 3 exclamation mark. Let's see. Yes, good. Okay. Very good. And we have a very nice interface for playing around with our database too. Not playing around. This is more like for serious work. I'm going to show you some of the tools. So first of all, you have ways to create things really loud. You can collapse this thing here. All these kind of nice things. You can open multiple tabs for your queries and all that good stuff, right? Then you can, for example, use this database. So when you run the queries, you're gonna run on that one, which is on bold, and then you have insights, which is very interesting, and your tables, of course, and other database objects. You can explore the schema real quick here. So let's see, for example, I don't know, countries, maybe the columns. There you go. You have also tools to generate an entity relationship diagram. We can place to the editor some of these things, or copy things to the clipboard, alter the schema, drop it, or create different database objects. So for example, if I go here, continents, I can click this icon and preview the data here, right? Or if I want to run a custom query, then I can go with select all. But anyway, this has auto completion, all the good stuff, right? From let's say countries again, and I can run this query, and there's a shortcut for that. So I'm going to use the shortcut. It warns you. You can just say, hey, don't ask again if you want, and then you get the results here, all right? And this is also very powerful because it allows you to order, it allows you to reload the data, filter, like for example, let's try to find Finland or Colombia. Very good, it's working. Let's try to group by, I don't know, maybe region ID would make sense somehow. So you see that's region ID 1, region ID 2, and so forth. We can hide some columns here. Maybe we're not interested in those. And we can also switch to vertical table if that's easier to navigate. We can download, and there are several formats that you can use, and you can configure how these things are going to be exported, right? Again, you can open new tabs here, and you can do some management of users. This user doesn't have privileges for that, so you cannot do it with this one, but that's good. You can configure the default limit for results, and these are the preferences. So you have some editor options here, the connections, some parameters, and some more UI related preferences for the workspace, right? So this is not toy. This is a real tool. It allows you to do a whole lot of things. Something I didn't show maybe was that you can create where is it? Visualizations, right? So depending on what you have here, you can create a chart. So again, this is not a toy. This is a real tool. You don't have to leave Enterprise Manager to go ahead and run your queries and profile queries and do this kind of stuff. Now that was the queries part, right? So we have tabs here for queries, but here we have tabs for either more like another database connection to the same or another database, and also the possibility to create ERD diagrams. So let's go ahead and connect to this one. App user pass 1 to 2 exclamation mark. And now we can actually create a diagram here. For example, table 1, then you can, we need to select the collation here. We need to add maybe a couple columns here and set the types and whatnot. We can create another one. Let's set this to some sort of collation. And something cool is that you can create let me change this to integer. There you go. I think this option kind of arranges the thing nicely. Okay, something cool is that you can click one of these and just drag for creating a relationship, a foreign key in this case, right? So that's pretty cool. If you hover on the line, then you see the code that would create that relationship. That's pretty cool. Of course, you can then export these or run the script, right? But not only that, something that you can do is you can generate the diagram from your database. So I have the nation database here, so I can select the tables that I want to visualize or the whole schema. And then the diagram is generated for you. So you can explore relationships and you can understand your schema and make modifications in a graphic way. So another pretty advanced feature. Some cool things, you can change the line to something different. You can actually rearrange this somehow. Of course, you can still arrange it any way you want, but then you can change the line. I didn't show that. Some other style of lines. It's pretty cool, right? Really, really good tool for visualizing your database. And the last option here is the settings for this application. So you have user management, which is for, well, the users, right, and the roles. So you can edit, update the users, change something with the users, or create new roles with their precise permissions, which is pretty good. And the other thing you have is the identity provider, which allows you to configure where an identity provider it's that's compatible with OpenID Connect with that protocol. So that you, for example, your users can use their corporate credentials to log into MariaDB Enterprise Manager, and also to MaxScale, because you can, from here, you can access the MaxScale UI, which is pretty cool, right? So here now we are on MariaDB MaxScale, the UI, with all the good stuff that it has, like the new config wizard and the visualizations of your topology and all the cool things. And it's integrated with MariaDB Enterprise Manager. So for example, if we, maybe I want to do a switch over here from, this is the current primary Enterprise Server 1. Let's use number 2 now. Let's promote it. And if we go back to Enterprise Manager, you will see that now the primary, it's Enterprise Server number 2. So of course, it's fully integrated. Everything you need to manage all these fleet from a single UI with the dashboards and the workspace, everything you need in a single web interface. All right, that's what I wanted to show you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.